Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's virtual plant clinic. I'm just going to take a minute, as always, while everyone's getting logged in to go over some notes just in case we have any new attendees. First of all, to those of you who are attending, who are regulars, welcome back. We're glad to have you. This is our last webinar of the season before we go into a break and pivot for the holidays. So thanks, David, for doing a season for us of plant clinics. Getting ready for Christmas now. Can't believe it. All right, some quick notes for anybody who is new today. If you are new, this is a webinar rather than a Zoom meeting. So you're going to ask questions by typing them into the Q&A box. And we will actually be taking questions during two periods today. This plant clinic is a little different. David just told me we're going to divide it in two. So we'll take questions during the first half, and then one of our colleagues is going to join David, and then we'll change topics, and then we'll take questions again during the second half. So please send any questions you have, and we will be going over those twice during today's class. If you have any issues, I'm going to open up the chat now, like technical issues, anything like that. Please feel free to send me a chat. I will do the best I can to assist you. And keep in mind, we do record the webinar today. So if anything happens and you have to leave or you're having trouble listening, you can access the recording tomorrow on our YouTube channel. Final note, for anybody who's attending outside of our local area, which is Northern Virginia, we're so glad you're here as always. Just keep in mind that any tips for today that we discuss are geared towards our local area, which is Garden Zone 7. That's correct, David. 7?
That's 7.
Okay, perfect. All right,
I know.
David.
I think you're probably like in zone 9. I'm in zone 7, and who knows where our viewers are.
Yeah, I know. We've had viewers, we have them in California, we've had Canada, we've had everything. So just keep in mind the timing of things may be a little different. So I always like to warn everybody about that. All right, David, I'll let you get started.
Excellent. And we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to jump right into this. Again, thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate you coming to spend your afternoon with us. So as Sally was telling us, I'm trying something a little different, trying to fit a bunch of stuff in today. So I will be sharing some fall garden tips. Like I said, I've got pointers as far as things to get your lawn looking good. We'll talk also about the garden beds, hit a few kind of maintenance practices and stuff that are in there. And then I will be taking questions. So that's how we're going to spend the first 30 minutes of our afternoon here. So if you get questions, please do send them in to Sally so we get to that point of the program. We can just jump right into it. And then, like you said, we're not finished because then I'll be having a special guest to talk to us about winter care of the pots, the fountains, the statuary and stuff. And then we'll have more opportunity for questions. So this should be fun, covering a lot of different topics with plenty of opportunity to interact. So again, this is just a fantastic season that we're in, the fall season. I never want to rush that along. I want to enjoy every minute of it. Thank goodness we had some much needed rain today, not enough to get us back on track, but we're at that point. It's been so dry, every little bit of moisture and rain we get is appreciated. So just start out a little colorful scene as a display at the front of the garden center. Just represents some of the beautiful colors and all the activity that's going on right now as we start heading into Halloween. And then, of course, there will be Thanksgiving and then Christmas. So I want to start out talking about lawns. This is such a critical time of year to keep the lawns looking really good. We grow cool season grasses in our area. And I took this picture just 2 days ago. And what it really represents is because we've had the cool weather, these are grasses that thrive at about 50 to 75 degrees, and the temperature has been wonderful, good bright sunshine. Like I said, the thing that's been holding lawns back in gardens in general is just the lack of rainfall. But if you can put a little bit of water on it, yeah, you can have a gorgeous lawn. And the important thing is, in the fall of the year, with these cool temperatures, the short days, we add some rain to it. This one, there's a lot of root growth taking place in there. The plant's storing carbohydrates that it's going to use to sustain itself, really even through the rest of the growing season. So it's really important that if we want to build deep, healthy roots, get our lawn looking tip-top now so that it's in good condition for the rest of the year, basically from now all the way through until next year. It's really important that we take care of that as soon as possible. So with that, starting out here showing you a fall fertilizer recommendations. So this emphasizes the importance of fall fertilization. And the way this chart is read is when you see this low, medium, and high recommendations, this is based on your expectations. So this isn't exactly or it has more to do what your goals and your objectives are than it really does exactly the health or vigor of the plant. So if you're just working on the very sort of the bare minimum, the lawn, it's you like to have a nice lawn. We want to say stay in some density, use it basically to stop erosion and keep it serving that purpose. Let's say I just fertilize it once in the fall. If I fertilized it once in October, that's enough to maintain a decent lawn that's going to serve its functionality as far as keeping the soil in place, preventing erosion, and keeping it going. Here at the garden center, we try to get everybody up at least into that medium range, and frequently we're recommending 2 applications in the fall. So for example, this could be a September and October application, or it could be an October and November application. So you still have the opportunity to catch up on that if you choose to. This again is based on expectations of lawn. If I'm saying the high range is the Better Home and Gardens one, the one where you take a lot of pride in it and you really, want to have the best lawn possible, darkest green color, the densest growth. If that's your objective, then that brings you into fertilizing September, October, and November. All of this fits within the state nutrient management guidelines, state fits within sort of the university guidelines and everything. So this is not like an excessive amount. This is really depending on what your goals, your objectives fall into there. So I'm really trying to emphasize is we want to get our fertilizing done sometimes before the end of November. So December 1 is basically that's our cutoff date. These are all within nutrient management guidelines and everything. So there's a little wiggle room on here, but I'm trying to stay consistent with all those recommendations. So again, that's going to be a September, October, November timeframe. If you have not done so yet, it is not too late to get started and put down at least this one application now, or maybe you're following up with your second or third application. Now, the fertilizer that you would use to do this is the Merrifield Premium. You can see there, when you see those numbers, that 26012, this is 26% nitrogen. All plants, basically all living things, need nitrogen. And at this time of year, you're going to see the grass green up. And it's using all this nitrogen, though, and building and accumulating carbohydrates down the root system for a stronger, healthier, denser root system as well. Phosphate, that middle number, again, in our area, in this Virginia, Maryland, DC area, around the Chesapeake Bay, we've taken phosphorus out of lawn fertilizers just as a precaution to say that that doesn't enrich the water in Chesapeake Bay. And then the 12% potassium, this also leads to thicker cell walls, stronger plants, enhances both heat and cold tolerance, disease resistance, things like that. So these fertilizers are specifically formulated for use throughout this entire region. It's a slow release product, which means it's not going to just run off or burn your lawn. And we want to get that done sometime before the 1st of December. Now we do also make available to you Merrifield Select. This is, you'll see those numbers are different. 14, 18, 14. Now this fertilizer does contain the phosphate. It contains 18% phosphate. This is a seed starting fertilizer because we know that newly seeded lawns or newly sodded lawns, they actually need that additional phosphate, the high energy demands of a young germinating seed that's getting its roots established. So again, if you're doing seeding or repair, then we're going to recommend the Select. But again, it's that September, October, November time period that's so critical. And the most common question that I'm getting right now is it too late to seed my lawn? And I'm saying no. You still have time to get your lawn seeded, but it needs to happen fast. It needs to happen now. When we're talking about getting grass seed in there, it's really a process that begins by applying the seed. Basically, I like to have you scratch up any dead grass that's in there, maybe remove any fallen leaves that are on there, sticks, kind of get the area clean, scatter the seed out. And one of the things that people make sometimes is a mistake of putting too much seed down. So I've tried to show in this picture, this is a pretty good density to have with seeds. It may look a little bit sparse, but each little leaf that comes up from there, that's just that one primary leaf. Then there's going to be another, a second, a third, a fourth. And each one of those little leaves is going to turn into a clump or a bunch of grass because most of it's growing tall fescue. And that needs a little bit of room to expand and spread out. Sometimes I see people that feel like more is better and they'll carpet the ground with seed. It all grows in. It doesn't have that room to expand, and then it all kind of collapses. So use that as a little bit of a visual guide of how much seed to put down. Uh, the germination process, of course, it absolutely requires moisture. Moisture will permeate that seed coat, which then starts the enzymes in there to react, and it triggers and initiates the expansion of that little, first the little root comes out, and then a little neat leaf starts to merge up. Grass needs sunlight to germinate, so we don't want to bury it deeply. In this picture, you can see I just put a tiny thin layer of compost over it, just enough to keep it in place, help hold some moisture in there, but that seed needs to be up near the surface. If it gets buried 1 or 2 or 3 inches deep in the ground, it's not going to grow. And then the thing that I really want to talk to you about most of all is it's going to need time and temperature. So it's got its germination, basically, like I said, it's a process of keeping it moist and having the proper temperature. So the ideal optimum temperature, soil temperature, emphasize there, the soil temperature for that seed is around 60 to 65 degrees, right? If it goes much below 50, then it's simply just not going to grow. So if I said, hey, anywhere from 50 to 65 is my range, and that 60 to 65 is ideal, that's the sweet spot where we want to be. Now, this morning, I went onto this Greencast online. That's a fantastic resource. I've been using it for years, and I find it's pretty reliable. It's very accurate, usually within a degree or two, even usually within a degree of what I might do with a soil thermometer. So if you look on this right now, here in my zip code where I'm sitting right now, it's giving me the current soil temperature. This was about 9:30, 10 o'clock this morning. Current soil temperature is 54 degrees. Again, you look at the 24-hour average, but what I'm looking at frequently is this 5-day average, because your grass seed, tall fescue, is going to need at least like 6 to 10 days for that to start to germinate and grow. So if I were paying attention, I said, hey, like 50 is the minimum degree range, 60, 65 is ideal. Right now, our average, we're sitting there at 52.6. So the thing I'm trying to really get at is if you want to do your seeding, you want to do it now. It's at that point where sort of every day counts. Our weather is very inconsistent. You know, if the sun comes back out, the ground warms up. I think it's all going to work for you, but let's get to it. Get your lawn looking really good for not just for this fall, but also into next year. So other things, little garden tips, switching gear. That's enough about lawns. There's still a lot that you can do, a lot of planting that you can do, just like we're talking about cool season grasses. There are a few cool weather or cool season annuals. And again, nothing better than the violas and pansies. So these are tough players. If you can put them out there in a range of colors, they will survive through the winter. And this is winter image. So what you get is when it's really cold, you can see the frost in the ground. They may lay down, kind of look like wilted spinach, but as soon as it warms up again and you start getting above 50 degrees, they perk up, the flowers will stand up, and you can get some blooms on there. So the nice thing about putting pansies in, of course, is that you can get some color now and you'll get color through the winter, but they will also go all the way through and continue to give you color next spring up until about June. So I'm kind of doing these year-end type of tips, but this doesn't mean your gardening season is over. These guys go all the way through the winter. And if you're new to gardening, everybody's always fascinated and says, wow, that you have flowers in the winter. Or sometimes if you're new to gardening, you see them all wilty looking, you give up and you pick them out and throw them away. We don't want that to happen. So get them in the ground, just like any new plant. And with our dry weather, just continue to keep an eye on them that they remain moist, and you'll be all set to go. Now, other things you could be, or maybe I'll use the word should be doing right now, in addition to putting pansies in, this is also the ideal time for planting bulbs. Bulbs can be planted anytime between now and about the 1st of December. Or no, I'm backing, I'm getting my lawns mixed up, from now to about Christmas time. So I don't want to cut our season short. Because again, I get all these questions about, is it too late for planting this or that? So with bulbs, we can extend our planting season right up until Christmas. Bulbs, again, they actually require a period of cold temperature. So for an example, something like tulips. Tulips, you want to get them planted in the ground. They require a chilling period of about 15 weeks that they need to be down there in the cool, moist soil where their roots are developing. And it's only after that chilling period that they actually initiate flowering and come up to bloom. This will vary between bulbs, but all our spring flowering bulbs basically work like this. So it might be 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 15 weeks, but the idea is to get them in the ground this fall, let them achieve that chilling requirement, and then they'll come up and bloom for you next spring. Usually we might even start as early as late February, but we're usually talking about more like March and really going into peak season as we get into early April. So these are just that great harbinger of spring. You don't want to miss out on that. And there's so many different colors to look at. This is a creation Peggy did. I don't do a lot of containers. Peggy does, where she'd done a lot of bulbs. And you can see some of the violas, these cool season plants that she put in last fall. And this would have been an image that you could have in spring. So you can grow them in the ground 100%, or you can grow them in pots like this and still get a lot of really nice, interesting effect going on. So continuing with planting annuals, bulbs, it's a good time also if you want to add some perennials in there. Excuse me. So I was thinking, right now, there are perennials that are still some in peak bloom. Like this is a dendranthema, used to be all called a chrysanthemum, but they rearranged kind of that genus, that genera. So that's in full bloom right now. They come, I was looking, I didn't bring any up because I just didn't today. But they come in a few different colors, some really nice fall color ranges. They call that Sheffield pink, but it kind of fades out a little bit to this more of a white color. It starts out pink. There's some that kind of have an apricot color, kind of an orange color. We looked into have those in stock, and so that's fun to play with. We can also have plants, perennials, for foliage color. In the background, that bright yellow image, that's Amsonia hubrecti. It's also called sometimes a blue star, in this case, Hubrex blue star, but nobody ever really calls it that, but that's a name. So this is a plant that is indigenous towards Texas, New Mexico, I think even in Arizona parts, in that southwestern part of the country, where it's well adapted to really hot, dry climates. So this is a tough plant. Very long-lived. I think the one you see in the background there has been in my garden for at least 15 years. And it just keeps going. I actually have to prune it back once or twice during the year to kind of manage its size so it doesn't become too big in there. So a lot of times after flowering, it comes out a nice little blue flower, usually in late April or May. Not a showstopper, but pretty. And then sometime after that, usually around June, I like to trim that back. But really, right now, this time of year, it's beginning to take on its full fall coloration, and it'll go this really bright yellow. And of course, that kind of fern-like leaf foliage that's in there. It's so nice. Other perennials for this time of the year, really the hellebores. It's an evergreen, deer-resistant perennial, which is kind of a nice thing about it. And usually we're talking like around February time period is when they'll come into bloom. So if you were in out looking for them today, you're not going to see any flowers. But they do add that foliage to your garden, do well, again, that kind of woodsy shade type of environment. And they have a big range of different colors in here. Just I'm showing sort of the whites. I think they call that other one pink frost, and there's many other varieties. So, and one of the things that's cool now, some of them actually have a little bit of variegation in color showing up in the veins of the leaf. So even the leaves can provide interest even when it's not blooming. And it is a very long lasting flower as well. Now I'm going to hit on just a couple little quick maintenance topics, and then we'll take some questions. So with your perennials, what am I going to do with them as we get a freeze and a frost that's on there? My best suggestion is going to be to do nothing. At one point in time, or things change over time, we would be recommending cutting these plants back, trimming them to the ground so the area has a nice, clean, tidy look for it. Well, of course, as we take a closer look at what's going on in our gardens, a lot of these stems that we can leave up for the winter provide a nice habitat and environment for different insects. A lot of solitary bees will actually nest and live within the stems of these plants through winter. The foliage that's in there will allow little small animals even to nest and spend winter in there. So if you leave the stems alone, it provides us a little bit of winter interest, and it provides habitat for these different insects that are around. I was just listening again, a podcast I listened to about gall insects that actually live inside the stems of the plants, and then other parasitizing insects that live inside the gall that's formed by that insect. So there's this all different levels of life going on in our gardens. And if we provide them a habitat for it, they have a place to live. This is sort of that same image, trying to give that idea here, but also like this is that Amsonia that you saw again, has these nice rigid stems that provide a structure and a shelter for it. This, I think, if I remember, is sort of, left over from Coreopsis that's in there. You can see even the ornamental grasses that are back there. So leaving some of this behind, it can be nicer for you and also nicer for insects and wildlife, birds that might want to seed on the seeds and so on. So that makes the life easier too. Less that you have to do to keep up with. Now, one last thing is just like we've talked about cool season lawns, cool season annuals, the bulbs that need the cool temperature. Well, there are also weeds that grow during the winter time. We don't think about this because what happens is they pop up in the spring. You're like, where did this stuff come from? Well, if you went out in your yard today and you're looking around, you might find little seedlings like you see in this large area. These are chickweed. This is a little seedling for mouse ear chickweed. This is the common chickweed. And the seeds have already started sprouting because we had cool weather. I've started seeing these even as early as late August. So if you're around, you can just kind of take a hoe or a little cultivator and scratch them out right now. They're easy to come up in their little seedlings, because what will happen for us in March and April, this suddenly explodes into things like chickweed, bittercress, dead nettle. So after you have kind of scratched some of these weeds out, if you'd like to, you can't put down a pre-emergent. You can put down, this is probably the best, most effective one for garden beds, landscape beds. You could put this pre and extended control down. This creates that chemical barrier that will prevent those seedlings from getting, from that seed being able to get started, and save you that kind of effort going on to next spring. And then one final thing here before we take the questions. This is also, if you want to do this, after you've kind of done this kind of work and have the beds prepared, it's a nice idea to put a little layer of mulch on there to protect the soil. Also gives a little protection for plants, helps conserve moisture. But I generally am recommending 1 to 2 inches of mulch. We never want to see big, thick layers of mulch like this. We never want to see it piled up in contact with the stem of the plants. So we can mulch up to, but not over top of that. So I'm going to take a quick break here now and see if we have any questions. Sally, is anybody?
We do, and you want to take questions until 2:30? Is that correct?
That's correct. So I have
okay,
like
so we
6
probably won't
minutes.
get to all of these, but we will get through as many of them as we can, and then we can come back to more. Just letting everybody know now. Our first question, David, is about aeration for the lawn. Is it too late to aerate the lawn? Is that something that should be done now?
No, you can still do that now. Like I said, I don't want too much time to go by. I'm patting myself on the back. I did my lawn at the end of August, which is the earliest I've ever done it, but I noticed in August, the temperature's been cool. So we are about 10 degrees below average soil temperature right now, which I thought was interesting. But we're still right up there in that low 50s. You could aerate, do your fertilizing, you do any of that stuff, still get good results.
Okay, great. Next question. If you have your bulbs already, do you need to plant them within 2 to 3 weeks?
Now you can keep your bulbs stored until you're ready to plant them, but ideally bulbs want to be kept at about 50 degrees in a dark location. So if you have a basement or a garage area or something that has those kind of conditions, like 50, 55 degrees, and out of the sunlight, you can keep them stored in there, but you definitely want to get them planted before Christmas. So the sooner you can do it, the better.
Yeah, so they have more time to have their cool period. Okay, perfect. Um, can we plant perennial seeds now, like echinacea or milkweed, or do we need to wait until the spring?
So you could plant them now. There's a couple ways of doing this. One is you can just sow them in the garden. They will probably just overwinter. I don't know that you'll get any germination this year, but then they would be able to sprout next spring. You won't see any growth really happening until about April. There's also this whole thing about winter sowing where you can sow them, essentially put them in, I've seen Tupperware containers, milk jugs, that kind of thing, start them in potting mix, set those jugs outside like in a deck or patio, and then you'll have little seedlings you can transplant into your garden next spring.
Didn't you do that a couple years ago
I did do that a
with
couple years ago.
potatoes?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to be doing it again with some seeds a garden friend gave me.
Oh, cool. Okay. Let's see. When you apply lawn fertilizer, do you need to water the fertilizer in or do you water before you fertilize?
Oh, good question. You should water it in. It needs moisture to activate it, so uh, definitely apply it and then water it in.
Okay. Okay. Next question. All right, let's see how many we can get through before in the next 3 minutes. My hellebore are starting to bloom and I know I need to cut back the leaves. Do I cut all of them back?
I don't. Now, a lot of these garden things, it's not an absolute right or wrong. I take the time to go through and just sort of individually cut the old weathered leaves off because you'll have some leaves that look fresh and green that I leave alone. And then I'll have some that look kind of weathered, as they're coming out of winter. And I'll go through and just individually cut those off a pair of scissors. I mean, that's the way I prefer to do it. But if you have a lot of them, that takes more time.
Okay. Here's a question about leaving the stems up over the winter. Does that encourage disease? Is that a potential issue if you leave them?
Uh, so the question again, does that encourage disease leaving the stems in there?
Yeah, like the perennials. Yeah.
Generally, no. Now we're more concerned about that, let's say in a vegetable garden or around fruit trees. We would definitely want to pick up any overwintering fruit or tomatoes or anything that's dropped on the ground, clean out old stems and things like that in that area. Also, keep in mind, you will still do a cleanup next spring. Again, there's some judgment. Some people are 100% naturalized areas, just leave everything out there the way it is. I think most of us that are in more residential kind of gardening don't want to leave that much behind. So I say like a hosta leaf that may collapse to the ground and just turn to mush. That stuff I'll clean up, but a lot of the woodier stems that have some structure to it, I like to leave that behind. So that's kind of a middle of the road answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Stilt grass is spreading across my lawn. Um, okay, this is from an HOA area. Cannot control the mowing. Can you overseed lots of tall fescue to deal with the weeds?
So you can still do your overseeding, but that's not going to control the stilt grass. Stilt grass is much like crabgrass. Now the freezing temperatures kill it. So when we get a good hard freeze, that stilt grass is dead, not coming back. But each plant is capable of producing 1,000 seeds, and that seed will germinate, and you'll get a new crop of stilt grass next year. If you apply a weed preventer, mostly crabgrass preventers work on stiltgrass. If you apply that in March, and then oftentimes you need to do a follow-up application in June. If you can get those two applications in, you can prevent it from reoccurring, but that's just going to be an annual maintenance thing. There's no long-term solution to it.
Gotcha. Okay. It's 2:30, so should we go ahead and
Good.
pause for a minute?
Yeah, so you know what? We're going to get back to showing you some slides. And with that, I'm going to introduce a good friend of mine. You may know him. He's been on our program with us before, Mr. Andy Donat. Andy, come on here. That chair for you.
All right, wonderful. Hi, everybody. Hi, David. Hi,
Hey, Andy.
Sally.
So Andy has been a buyer of pottery, statuary, all that kind of stuff, fountains. He's done the installations on them, so he's a know-it-all on that. You hail from what, North Dakota?
All the way from North Dakota and Minnesota, don't you know?
So I figure he knows a thing or two about cold weather. And so Andy, I want you to come and talk to us about what we should be doing to winterize and getting those features in our garden.
Yeah, and I think we got a couple videos loaded up that I recorded the other day that are going to speak to that lightly speak to pottery and how we can get a longer lifespan and get through winters. And then there's also a video on fountain water feature winterization. I think maybe best is that do we just play those videos and then I can speak a little bit more detailed about some of the subjects mentioned, and then maybe we'll have some time for some
We'll
Q&A.
go one at a time. We'll show the pottery one, see if there are any questions, and then show the fountains.
I love it. Yeah, let's start there.
Andy, how do I protect my pots over the winter?
That's a great question, Mackenzie, and we get that quite a bit. We get strong seasonal change in Northern Virginia where we see highs and lows, and it fluctuates throughout the winter. Nothing is frost proof, but things are frost resistant, and so we want to elevate our containers in the winter, and this can be done throughout the season if you like the look. But more importantly, in the winter, we don't want our pots in a shallow puddle of water that will in turn freeze, expand, and cause irreparable damage. This is a pot foot right here, and it's a really simple, easy process. For any round pot, you would use 3 pot feet to simply elevate the container. This allows the water to drain out and release from the container, so it's not sitting in that puddle that will in turn in the winter freeze and cause irreparable damage.
Andy, how do I protect my...
So one thing I know I was going to ask Andy about the pots, and does it matter what material it is? You know, we're talking about ceramic or
Yeah, so
glazed, not glazed, so
material is definitely, I don't want to say a concern, but something to be thoughtful about. Most people are fairly familiar with the term terracotta, but if you don't know, it's a red clay pot that doesn't have any glaze on it. Clay is porous, meaning water can soak into it. Terracotta is generally, relative to other types of material, a little bit more fragile. And it's funny, here in Northern Virginia, I've had people that have had the same terracotta pot year after year, never bring it in, and it lasts. And I've also had clients that have had a terracotta pot for one winter and it just happened to not be in the right area or froze really hard one year and got damage. The other types of materials we see are going to be plastics, ceramic. Ceramic is clay that has a glaze fired onto it, but it does help the robustness of that pot. And there's also things like concrete. All of those materials absolutely could get damaged with a hard winter freeze. A commercial grade plastic such as Crescent Gardens is a plastic supplier that we have, is probably the strongest and really doesn't need any winterization. But even a thick concrete pot, David, could break in a hard freeze. So elevating any material is certainly going to be worth our time, energy, and effort.
because I'm one of those people, I just have two pots, I guess, you know, they're glazed, sounds like ceramic glaze. I'm out there for 15 years and never had any chipping or spalding, but they are up on pot feet, like you said.
Yeah, and
that's the difference.
That really is probably a difference maker for your containers. Now, One thing I didn't mention, if anybody's familiar with Talavera, it's a hand painted Mexican pottery. It's absolutely beautiful. Those pots are handmade in warmer climates in a different environment. And so I always suggest something like that. Just take it in, look at it inside. It's beautiful, but don't risk it in the winter. But virtually everything else, I would say you can keep outside, but once again, we want to elevate with the pot feed. And that means if we were using a saucer, we need to cancel that saucer for the winter. The saucer is doing the exact opposite in the winter of what we want, which is holding water to the bottom of that container. And it just takes one hard freeze and we'll have some broken pots in the morning.
So we want to look at fountains or anything to follow up on with the pots.
I think we can move on to fountains. It's kind of in the same vein. We'll play that video and then I'll go over some more detailed information as well.
Go.
So with the change of season and the cooler temperatures coming in, a lot of people have been inquiring about how to properly winterize their fountain so they can get the longest lifespan out of their water feature. Everybody's water fountain is a little different, but the process is generally the same. So step one is we're going to unplug our water pump from our power source. Once the pump is no longer running, we want to drain the water. Some fountains have really easy access drain plugs. Some you got to kind of find where the pump goes through the fountain and release the water. I like to dry all excess water with a little absorbent cloth, and then I also will leave this cloth in the fountain before I cover it, which we've got some fountain covers here, in case any precipitation or moisture gets in over the winter. Hopefully that water will absorb into our material rather than settle into the fountain, expand and freeze and cause irreparable damage. The fountain covers we offer here are a waterproof cover that is conical in shape, that sheets over it and then has a cinch cord so that you can pull it tight to protect your fountain over the winter. Following these steps is going to get you season after season of your water feature. Some people don't winterize fountains and they're going to experience their concrete slowly breaking apart and cracking, which can become dangerous and will just really shorten the lifespan. So winterization to me is a must every single year. And when do we actually need to do it? Well, it's before the first hard freeze. A lot of these suppliers will tell you if you see a car parked outside and frost has formed on its windows in the morning when you see that, that means, hey, it's time to winterize the fountain.
Excellent. So I may have missed that right at the beginning, but do you remove the pump from there or is it in place?
You can leave the pump, but you would still want to take a towel or something absorbent to get any moisture out of the pump as well. Any bit of water when it freezes, just like your ice cubes in your freezer, when it freezes, water expands and can cause damage both to the concrete of the pump or also to the concrete of the fountain and also to the plastic components of the pump. So getting any excess water of the pump is important. And then in theory, you could leave it in the fountain with the cover over it. It will be in a dry protected area.
At least where I live, I have not seen the frost in the windshield, so I can procrastinate a bit longer.
Just a bit. I mean, we're right on the edge. I mean, I think we all know 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing. And even if we saw a couple nights at 30, 31 degrees, that's not necessarily a hard freeze, but I always, would rather be safe than sorry. So if I see 32 or below, I'm just saying, yep, that's it for the fountain season. It's time to hang up the boots.
Well, that's today's idea. So we're giving you some time. We're saying, hey, we're getting to the end of that time. We're starting to push it into that. If you've been procrastinating, that's okay, but your time is running short.
That's right.
Basically. So let's go back to Sally. Do we have any questions that can be on gardening, statues, fountains?
We do. Why don't I start with a few we have on fountains and then we can start jumping back and forth. So here's what's coming on containers and fountains. I wrap my glazed containers in bubble wrap, but they sit on a stone. Should I elevate them?
I would consider elevating them. And whenever we move things, fountains or pots, I also like to remind people that these things can be heavy. And so please use caution when moving them. I've been moving and unpacking concrete at Merrifield Garden Center for just a little bit over a decade, and I certainly have had a couple tweaks of the back when I got a little bit too hungry with the move. Meaning, hey, if you lift up your pot and it doesn't feel right, grab another person, be safe, lift it carefully so you don't break yourself or the pottery, but I would elevate it. And the bubble wrap's great. That's what that person is doing is helping a little air insulation to help protect our roots in that pot over the winter. That can go a pretty long ways as well.
Okay, great. All right, next question. What do you put under plastic pots in the winter? Do you use the pot feet as well for those?
Yeah, so I mean, we offer plastic pot feet, not that they need to be the same material, but for when it comes in terms of cosmetics or looks, if you will, it's nice to have something looking good and functioning well. So yeah, you can put plastic pot feet under there, but you you don't need a pot foot to raise something up. You could use a brick, you could use a paver, but we sell wonderful pot feet. They look really good, and I always like a nice complete look in the garden.
And you need to you recommend elevating the plastic pots, right? That question just came in. You recommend elevating all the pots?
Yeah, once again, plastic usually has a pretty good chance of making it through, but not all plastics are equal. So some are what you would consider commercial grade that have a really good chance of making it through regardless. But some other plastics still can get hard and brittle in the winter. So I say, yeah, just do your due diligence and put pot feet under there. Get that thing elevated.
Okay. Okay. Okay, this is our last question for now on pots. Um, for pots and saturated that have cracks, have you heard of this? And I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Kintsugi. It's the method. I've actually seen pictures of it where they repair the pottery by mending the cracks with powdered metal and gold. Have you ever done that, or do you know anyone who has?
I haven't. I find that process very intriguing. So I've watched lots of YouTube videos on it. A little kind of fun fact is in Asian culture when they do that with pottery, it's not just fixing a broken pot. It's actually speaking to humanity, meaning when things happen that we don't expect to happen and things break or crack, that doesn't mean that we should just consider them waste or garbage. And so they've incorporated that into how they legitimately fix broken pottery. They usually reinforce it with wiring, and then they will take a filler and usually adorn it in like a gold flake. And so you're taking something that's broken and making it not only complete, but maybe more beautiful than the original. We're all stronger after we've made some mistakes and learned.
Cool. Okay. All right. Back to our plant questions. And then, of course, please feel free to send in more questions about containers and fountains. We'll jump around. All right. Our first question, David, this is a common question that we get at this time of year. Is it too late, this time specifically a dogwood? Is it too late to plant a dogwood? And I will expand that to say trees and shrubs in general.
Oh, it's absolutely not too late. This is actually a very good planting season, like we've talked about. Really, for deciduous trees and shrubs, the ones that shed their leaves, this is kind of the ideal time because it's pleasant to go outside and work for you. You also get to put the plants in the ground as they are going into their resting state. Cold weather is not an issue. Like we're talking about dogwoods, they've been growing here for millions of years. They're well adapted to our climate and our temperature extremes. So that's just not an issue as far as cold goes. We always anticipate rain, sleet, snow. If we're not getting that, you might have to, on rare occasions, might have to do a little watering. But other than that, yeah, you put them in the ground. Roots usually keep growing right up to about the 1st of January, and then they resume growing as we get in towards March. So next spring, your dogwood would have about 2 or 3 months of root development by next spring that it would not have if you hold off on planting. So yeah, we absolutely want you to keep planting.
Okay. Okay. Next question. I want to bring my geranium in for the winter. What's the best way to store them?
So there's really 2 different ways that you can go about this. One is to keep it actively growing, which is trying to find a nice sunny window. You keep it watered, you keep it actively growing. And they do relatively well indoors. The thing that limits them is the amount of sunlight, because again, geraniums want even some direct sun. So another thing that is done, it works, but sometimes with less success, is literally just letting it dry out, going dormant. And I have actually done this a long time. I used to live where I had a barn, and I would just take them out of the ground. I could shake the loose dirt off of them, and I don't know why we're supposed to hang them upside down, but I did. Hang them upside down, and they would just dry. But there would still be enough life in that stem that next spring you could pot it up and start growing again. That is less reliable, but it can be done if you're really limited on just not having the space. And this would be an unheated area if you're going to try to keep them dormant. So you'd be looking at sort of a garage or shed type of environment. And sometimes you can have success with that.
Okay. All right. Back to a couple of fountain and container questions, Andy. Do I need to cover my cement bird bath? Can I leave this out for the birds?
Great question, and that actually reminded me, I did want to mention bird baths. So bird baths, just like water fountains, hold water. I might sound like a broken record here, but yeah, winterization is important. Water always wins. You know, that big Grand Canyon was not formed by man; it was formed by water. And I kind of say that playfully, but water certainly can break bird baths. I get asked, well, you know, the birds want the water. So it is a personal choice. You certainly can just leave your bird bath out and risk it, and the birds are going to appreciate it. Of course, if the bird bath does break with damage, there will be no water for them anymore. But I usually take the tops off of the bird bath, lift that off, put them on their side, and gently lean it up against the pedestal or pillar, and you can winterize it that way. Or if you're comfortable moving your bird bath components into a garage or shed for the winter, it certainly is going to get a longer lifespan for your bird bath. It's a great question.
I know I had a ceramic one that I just left outside, never protected it. I got about 5 years good use eventually.
Did it break eventually?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I know it will, right? But you know, I was okay with that.
Yeah.
And for the birds, and then I replaced it with a granite one that's so far been holding up.
Granite's a pretty good material. Once again, nothing is waterproof, but if you have a nice granite bird bath, not concrete, but granite, that really hard stone, yeah, you certainly are going to get a pretty long lifespan out of that.
I know it was too heavy to move, so
I
Yeah.
was gonna say that sounds like heavy. That's awesome.
You could use a fountain cover for a bird bath as well if you wanted it to sit in place. Let's see if I can describe the point I want to make is you would still, when you cover it, it is like a conical cover that goes over the top of it. And that cover is soft, meaning if it rains or snows, that cover could go down into the bowl and still fill with water. So you would actually want to put something in the bird bath like a brick so that it has a skeleton
it's
inside
like
of
a
it.
tent pole.
A tent pole, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, right? Yeah.
David, for you, is there anything you can leave out? Well, or I guess Andy, is there anything you can leave out if you want those birds to have water but don't want your bird bath destroyed, potentially? Or not willing to risk it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if you get like once again commercial grade plastic, the only
Something
thing that
plastic.
I know that we currently offer that's rated commercial grade plastic is the Crescent Garden planters. They, I think, make a water bowl, meaning a planter with no drainage. That could work. Also, you could use something made out of metal. Think a dog's water bowl. Metal will certainly freeze faster because of how temperatures conduct through it, but I couldn't see a well-made metal thing necessarily breaking.
Okay.
That could be your best bet if you want to feed the birds still.
I've never used a bird bath de-icer, but I think people have had. The birds seem to love it. It seems like that might prevent
Yeah,
the ice from
that's
expanding and breaking.
that's a great point, David. It's something I know we've carried in the past. I'm not sure what we currently have in stock, but there are things called de-icers Now there's deicers for ponds that are a different thing than a deicer for a bird bath. A deicer for a pond, just to be clear, melts a hole through the ice and that's all it does. It does not keep the entire surface freeze in a liquid form. It only melts a hole in a pond so gases can release as fish and plants make waste. A deicer for a bird bath is usually a small flat piece that is powered, and it gets a little warm to keep that water liquid.
Gotcha. Okay. Next question for you, Andy. Are pots which are put in a shed over the winter should you remove all soil from pots that are put in a shed over the winter?
That's a good question. Now, if the soil was very wet, I would consider removing it. If the soil was fairly dry, we probably can keep it as long as it's not, once again, if it's protected from any additional precipitation. So if it's undercover, I don't see much issue with that.
Okay. Alrighty. Next question. Back to some weeds, David. Some questions for you. I have grass and weeds that have invaded my rose bed. Can I add preen around the roses and not harm them?
Yes, you can. Now, keep in mind that preen is a weed preventer. So you would need to invest the time and effort to go out there and remove the weeds that are there today. And then you could apply that preen granule to the soil to prevent new weeds from coming back in. But yeah, you always can double check the label. It's always a good practice. But it is for use around existing trees, shrubs, landscape beds, and flowers. So like I said, it just stays up there on the surface of the soil. It does not go down into the root zone.
Okay. Next question on weeds. What's the best way to remove wild ginger and prevent it from coming back next year? Is that like is that the same where you pull it and treat it with weed preventer, or is that something different?
Well, I've never heard wild ginger called a weed.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually a pretty slow growing, non-aggressive plant. You could uproot it and bring it to me, would be one. But no, it does spread by little rhizome. It's got this.
Okay, yeah, so maybe there's too much of it in this case.
Yeah, but it should be very shallow and it should be easy to dig out of there.
Okay, so alrighty.
Not
Next
but
question.
yeah, I would just say just dig it out would be the only option we have right now.
Gotcha. Okay. This is like with the violets question where we have always one person say, "How do I get rid of my violets?" and another person says, can I buy violets at the store?"
It does bring something up though I want to mention. Pretty much most of the weed killers are effective in temperatures of 50 degrees or above.
Okay.
Some that will help even if we get down to 40 degrees. But this is a part of the thing is we go later into the season and our weather is more variable. We give these dates, but it really depends on the weather. And it's been a little cooler this year. So today's answer is yes. I mean, the weed killers would still work. You ask next week and you might get a different answer. But that 50 degrees is kind of a critical number.
Gotcha. Okay. Last question on weeds for now. I have a lot of weeds and I'm having a hard time getting rid of them. In this case, it's in their herb and vegetable beds. What do you recommend?
Ooh, that's tough around in the herb and vegetable bed because we're pretty much limited to hand weeding. I mean, some of these weed controls are labeled that you might be able to use them. It's just I'm not comfortable using like herbicides in a weed and vegetable garden. So again, you would have to kind of go with hand weeding.
Okay.
And also mulching and soil covers like that to help prevent things from coming back.
Okay. Next question. Rake leaves or leave them be?
Well, if we're talking about a lawn environment, we don't want to actually smother the grass or like totally shade it out. So a light cover of leaves is fine, or mulching them up with a mower is fine. But if they're accumulating really thick or deep where it's going to shade out the grass, at that point, you do need to intervene and do some leaf removal. If it's in a flower bed or landscape bed, you can just let them lie there in the beds. They'll compost down, they might blow around a little bit, but they are basically acting as a natural mulch in the flower beds and garden beds. So if you want to leave them there, that's totally fine.
Perfect. So remove from lawn leave in the beds if you want
Yeah,
to.
because you'll find beetles and moths and butterflies and different species of insects. Their cocoons and or pupas and stuff are in that leaf litter layer. So everything from lightning bugs on. So that's the whole idea. If you're lucky enough that you have a naturalized area, one recommendation is literally is to blow or move or that material back even into that naturalized area. Or like I said, if you can just leave it alone, that's fantastic.
Okay. Alrighty, next question about mums. Mums are popular plants, excuse me, popular plants for this season, but mine always seem to die. I end up throwing them away. Do you have any tips? Should I try planting them in the ground?
So we of course we sell what we call pot mums in the annual section.
Like the ones behind you, right? Those
Like
ones?
what's behind us, these
Yeah.
bulbs. So they are not necessarily bred for their winter hardiness. They're bred for their flower form, the bright colors. And if you were to plant them in the garden, I'd say you have a 50-50 chance of success with them perennializing and living in there through the winter. Or you can go over to the perennials department and buy some winter hardy mums. They have more of that simple daisy type flower, like I showed in a couple of slides. Those are rock solid, hardy, aggressive plants that you can rely on to come back for year after year.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, next question. Sorry, I'm trying to see. I think we might get through all of them. I have invasive Chinese fountain grass growing everywhere. Should I try to get rid of it this fall? What is the best way to do it? They have big seed heads on them right now.
Yeah. So at a very minimum, you could remove those seed heads and put them in the trash before they have a chance to disperse. Now that plant, we grow it because we like the pretty attractive flower heads, but then that's also how it spreads and becomes invasive because the wind carries and disperses those seeds. So if you realize, hey, this stuff needs to go, then you could capture the seeds and dispose of them with the household trash for now. It is not going, the herbicides won't work on it because as we were talking about, that's a warm season grass and the grass needs to be green and actively growing and warm temperature for the herbicides to work. So you could wait next summer, like in June, July, when it's warm and they're actively growing, and spray them the herbicide at that time. If you're determined and aggressive enough, if you want to dig them out, you could dig them out, but they have a pretty tough, aggressive root system. So you got to make sure you're like physically ready to take that on.
Okay. All right, we have two more questions, so we'll see if any more come in, but we've got a couple minutes. Can I keep my poinsettia outside during the winter?
Poinsettia, no way. Not going to work. Not if you live in zone 7.
Yeah.
Of course, I remember my grandfather in Southern California, he grew his outside. It was like a shrub, but I think that's not until you get down to like zone 9 or something. No, they're native to Mexico. So in our region, they would definitely freeze out on you.
Yeah, they're pretty tropical, aren't they? I think they're
Yeah, yeah.
almost tropical. Yeah.
You might get
Okay.
by down there in Florida.
Yeah, yeah, kind of. I think where I am in North Florida. I think I have lanternfly damage on my maple tree and my sand plum tree. First year dealing with them. Do I need to treat the trees or just cry?
Ooh, so we're kind of all learning about that at the same time. I know here in Fairfax, they started showing up last year, and there's even more this year, and probably more next year. So those things will probably get worse before it gets better. My understanding is that they're really only damaging on certain plants, like I know they are with grapes. I haven't really heard to the point where they're very damaging on trees. There are pesticides we can use. I think it's something I'd rather talk to you about one-on-one because I'm like, so there are systemic pesticides that you can put in the ground next spring. They're absorbed up in the tree, but there's precautions about using that. Especially, I'm not really keen on that idea of fruit trees. Otherwise, it's a matter of right now, they're kind of in their egg laying stage, do some monitoring, get familiar with what the egg masses look like. If we can scrape and remove the egg masses, that's how they survive through the winter time. That would be a good cultural thing that we could do right now. Otherwise, talk to us at the plant clinic, and there are a range of different insecticides that we could consider using next year.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty. That's our last question, right at 3 o'clock on the dot. So thank you everybody. David and Andy, do you all have anything you want to wrap up with before we close?
No, just thanks so much for joining us. Andy and I both work here at the Fair Oaks location. Stop by to see us. Andy helps out the plant clinic a lot, or you'll find him in statuary, or this time of year he's often climbing around in the rafters doing some kind of Christmas decorating. Yeah, me, I'm trying to stay out of the way, so you may have to ask if I'm around.
Alrighty. Well, I'm pretty sure this is our last plant clinic of the season. If I'm wrong about that, you'll get an email about it in a couple weeks advertising the next one. But I think we're pivoting to holidays now. So thank you guys all so much, and look forward to the Christmas shop opening soon.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Talk to you all later. Have a good day.